Radio. That's Radio Radio on urbannationradio.com. This is episode 41, Fiat currency. And we talked about what fiat currency is. We're going to go a little deeper. I'm going to pass it right off to my good brother, Info Q.
Yeah, so we talked about fiat currency, which is basically currency that's only valuable because the government says it's valuable. And the current economic system that we have now is what's called a debt-based currency. So, which pretty much means that every dollar in rotation or in circulation right now is basically existent because of debt. And if we use the simple model of basically a economic system with $100, so pretty much the bank produces the $100. Well, the Federal Reserve produces the $100, which in turn loans it to the banks, and then the banks loan it to us at an interest rate. So that's two interest rates: the interest from the Federal Reserve to the bank, and then the interest from the bank to the people. So that's two interests that have to be paid that are non-existent. So just say if the Federal Reserve loaned the $100 to the bank and said at a 5% interest rate, which means now they owe back to the Federal Reserve $105. But the thing is that $5 that they owe, it doesn't exist. So now how could you ever pay it back? That's why we call it a debt-based currency, because the money in circulation is not enough to pay back the debt because it doesn't exist. It was created out of thin air. And also too, only 10% of actual physical money exists in any form whatsoever. So paper, coins, all of that, only 10%. The rest of it is just numbers in a computer. So, which means that it can easily be manipulated and it can easily crash, because if the internet crashes or the system crashes or everything resets back to zero, which is what the Y2K scare was about, how would you prove that you have any money whatsoever? So that's why it's valuable to learn useful skills, because if the system collapses or crashes or anything, the desk job that you normally work, those skills won't be useful without the presence of that job. So that's why we need to invest in actual skills and actual tangible things, not just paper fiat money, which is what everybody chases now.
I just want to interject just for a second, fed you back on something that you said. You said 10%, only 10% of the money is actually, I'm going to use the word real, or actually exists. And that brings me to another 10%, 90% statistic, which is goes back to one of those buzzwords we said, the Federal Reserve, and something called fractional reserve banking, which our country and many countries around the world currently use now, which actually was a reason for a lot of the crisis that's going on right now, is the ability to have $1 and then create 9 times the amount that you currently have and send that out as loans. And so you're creating money that doesn't exist. And this is what our government does. Like, this isn't a hypothetical. This is literally what our government,
the Federal Reserve,
what the Federal
which
Reserve,
which is not federal at all.
Thank you. What the Federal Reserve does, prints legal tender, and 9 times. So let's say the United States has, like you said, $100, right? They'll take that $100 and then loan $900 out.
Yep.
Around the world. Maybe you give 100 here, 200 here, 300 here, 200 here. And so those people, those companies, those organizations, those countries now have to pay back that money that doesn't exist plus interest. Mm-hmm. And so this is the same interest that the Federal Reserve is charging us to print money. Mm-hmm. And there's a good film that really articulates this. It's called the brain's going, nothing's coming. It's called what's that 30-minute clip? It's called
The American Dream or
The
something.
American Dream. This guy is good.
Banking
It's
the
good.
American Dream.
It's called The American Dream. It's about like a 29-minute video, but in there, it's a cartoon, but it clearly articulates the history of money and also the history of our current system. And I just wanted to make those 2 points clear. Fractional reserve banking is what we use, which I mean is morally wrong, just wrong. Period. And certain faiths forbid, the use of interest, and they call it usury.
Yep. Muslim.
And so there's a reason for these things. They're not just things that are kind of outdated. There's nothing new under the sun. And this is a good tie-in to everybody's not religious, but everybody's familiar with the story of Jesus or Yahshua and how he flipped over the tables of the money changers. And the money changers were doing the same thing that the Federal Reserve is doing right now. They're doing the exact same thing on steroids all around the world. And he flipped over the money tables of the money changers. And whether he was there or not, the fact that story still has relevance today is what's important. And so I just wanted to say that. And toss it back.
One of the most important takeaways that we should take away is that the system is designed to fail. So it's not a matter of if, but a matter of when. And I'm sure everybody is familiar. We between 18 to 19 trillion dollars in debt. And if you take all of the money in existence, it's about 11 to 12 trillion dollars. So even if everybody say, let's everybody take all the money that's in existence and let's pay back the debt, it's still not enough because of what we said. It's a debt-based currency. So it's designed to fail no matter what. I mean,
planned obsolescence.
I was going to say one thing that we got to get in our minds deeply when they say, "Oh, we got all this $1 trillion in debt." Well, who do we owe? We have to understand that every country who has fractional reserve banking owes somebody. They own the bankers, and so the whole world is in debt. So, again, you can't pay off a debt if everybody's in debt. If every single person on the planet is in debt, then nobody's going to be able to pay off this debt because you don't have, to this point, you don't have enough money. A very good book that really opened my eyes to this when I was in high school is called The Creature from Jekyll Island. It's written by Edward G. What is his last name? Wilson or something like that. But if you type in The Creature from Jekyll Island, and I'll go into a little bit of the history really quick. So how we got to this point was at once upon a time, people just had commodities. People just had things, fish and barley and rice. And of course, because certain things spoiled, they would either trade rather quickly, or in order to preserve things, they began to give their money to a guy who would basically make coins and say, "I owe you." Actually, start off with papers. It was, "I owe you X amount of this or X amount of that." Over time, he started realizing that some people passed away, didn't come get there. Some people forgot they gave him things, so he started using what he had to basically. He got greedy. He had all this stuff, and he wanted more stuff. And so eventually he started trading things he would make his own, "I owe you blah, blah, blah." And so that began the beginning of what we would consider modern day banking, where you have a guy, nobody's paying attention to him, creating things and becoming very wealthy and tricky doing so. And as time went on, the Jewish people really were the pioneers to a lot of the banking system, which is why, again, as time went on, Hitler decided that there was an issue there. He felt they were ruining his country because they had signed up to a centralized banking system. Again, so to put things in retrospect, a guy has all these things, and he started giving IOUs. No one's watching. Eventually, he creates as many as he wants. And over time, he became very influential doing so. And then you start buying politicians. The U.S. government in 1913 signed the Federal Reserve Act, and that's when we got a centralized banking system that was not operated by the government. And we know 20 years later was the Great Depression, which Keith spoke on earlier. So just in that 20-year window, the game started, and you saw how quickly they built things up. And then as soon as when the Industrial Revolution was peaking out, they crashed everything. And then basically all the what they do when they crash the market is to basically get rid of all the people who are at the bottom who kind of start making it. Like as soon as you kind of start, cause once you get enough money, it's just like a exponential curve. You start getting a lot of money quick. So what they do is as soon as a certain generation of people start to get something, they wipe them out, which is what 2008 was, where a lot of the baby boomers about to retire, and they didn't want them to retire. They wanted them to continue working. So that's what they crashed the market.
And so, and another thing to that, to give you a real life example of what happens. I'll give you this example first. There's the example of printing or giving out IOUs, right? And this is kind of real life example and a figurative example. So you know, everybody's, say, Mindful B is giving out, you know, everybody's letting me hold their coins or whatever, and I'm giving them IOUs. And I start making more, realizing that people aren't really coming back. And I start giving out more IOUs, and I have gold to back it up, or silver to back it up, or rice to back it up, or salt to back it up, whatever it is. And then something happens in the environment, economic environment, political environment, environmental, whatever happens, it makes people uncertain, and they say, I need to keep my stuff closer to me. Maybe it's a natural disaster. Maybe it's they found out a scandal with the banking or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And when everybody comes and gets their stuff at the same time, since the person is not being honest and selling more things than he has, there's not enough gold or silver or salt or cowrie shells or whatever it is to pay off that. So there's that's called a run on the bank. Yeah. And that's what caused the many of the collapses, financial collapses.
You know, right now in Greece, with the turmoil in Greece right now, there was 3 weeks went by where people could not go to the bank to get their money. They just opened up, and right now you're going to get, I believe they said, $65 a day.
Like your money,
like your own money that you put in there. And so this is again the reason they're doing that is to prevent a run at the banks, because once the people do the run of the bank, the country is done, because all of the illusion they painted were, I got this budget that we can't go over, and I got this, all this little myth stories they have, it goes out the window, because either the government's going to go and just have people do the work and just make money up, which they do anyway, and let people know we just make money up.
That's what happened in 2008 too. They just printed up $400 billion and just put it into the economy.
And actually, our government vetoed all that legislation, and it goes to show that the Federal Reserve did it anyway. People don't really understand that. But the point what we were saying earlier, the Federal Reserve is just as federal as Fed Express. Like, it's not a federal entity. It's actually a private-owned company owned by wealthy families, the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, names you've heard, you don't really see in the media because they run the media. But the point I'm trying to make again is that it's not a government entity. And even though the U.S. Treasury signs off on it, they still can do whatever they want to do. We have a video that we're going to show in a little bit too. It's about a 10-minute video. When we get back from commercial, we'll show, and it kind of spells this. So everything we're saying puts into a visual context where you have an easier understanding of what we're talking about. But yeah, we definitely have to understand what the Fed goal is, because sometimes I think we start chasing money, and we get caught up in day to day and not realizing that overall there's a certain interest group whose main objective is to create that issue. And so from my perspective, I always function understanding that we live in a very sick and slave society. I mean, you think about it, it's slavery. If I tell you, here's $1, and I bring you back $1.20, and then somehow you do manage to give me $1.20, I say, okay, well, here's $1.50, you give me $2. The longer this game goes on, eventually this game is going to collapse, and that's how this game is played. Um, and what they do also is they promote celebrities, athletes, and they put them on TV to get everybody wanting, this elaborate lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. And all of that's articulated very, very well in that the short clip. It's called I keep forgetting the name. Not the corporation. That's another one. The that's a long title there. What's the original title? The American Dream.
Banking the American Dream.
Mm-hmm. And so that's a different one that we're gonna actually show. So we're just gonna go to break and then come back and show this show the clip, and then we'll have some discussion around that, and maybe we'll show the other one at one of our other during one of the other segments. Is that cool? Cool. Good. Yeah. So we're gonna take a quick break. We'll come back with more radio. Stay tuned. Listen in for the music that's playing. Everything is very intentional that we do, and so give us your feedback on what you liking so far, and we'll see you very shortly, or you'll see us rather. Peace and power. This is Radio.